Welcome everyone, 7-Day Reinventing You Challenge. I'm your host, Alyssa Sulli, and I am thrilled for our guest speaker today. His name is Jason Johns. This is a man known as a jack of many trades and talents, having continuously thrived in business, leadership, and as an entrepreneur. From landscaper to electrician, manager of hotel and bar, he's built his home from the ground up, and the list could keep going. But there has been one common thread for Jason as a successful businessman: his burning desire to help others. After his career pushed him to the brink, he knew he had to take a step back and invest in himself and not only pursue his life passion, but his calling. Jason is a leader who inspires, motivates, and guides others through the process of creating a new mindset and fulfilling life. Welcome, Jason. We're so excited to have you. I had the opportunity to meet you online at another group program that we do in the coaching world, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed, and I really resonated with your story and just the lessons that it has taught you in life. And I'd love to open this space now for you to share your story about reinventing yourself in life and the tools that you have used to really create a more fulfilling life for yourself.
Well, I really just appreciate you having me on here. This is absolutely unbelievable. I'll be completely honest. It is my first podcast, so I'm ecstatic about this. So thank you for the opportunity. And this is reinventing myself into a whole nother world itself today. So going along with the phase, it's an absolute fantastic part to be jumping into this reinvent challenge and to your podcast. So I thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited. So tell us about your story, the reinventing story. I know it's kind of a fresh thing for you, but that's what's so beautiful about the reinventing you process. We're constantly evolving in life. It's not just like 20 years ago, I figured it out, and then we're always evolving. And I love that your story is a little more fresh so that we can really connect with this process of 7 days and realizing I'm not alone. Like I'm not the only one going through this today. So please dive into you and everything that's gone on for you most recently.
Okay, so my story really starts last January. A typical Friday morning, I'm going into work. We have our management meeting, and we all kind of grab our coffees and go sit around the board table. And our owner comes in, and he starts off the meeting, and everything's going fine as usual. He just kind of points out some pointers of where we're struggling a little bit. And then he kind of just goes, but I don't mean to be rude to anybody in the room, but I just want to be honest with you. Nobody in this room will ever make as much money as I have lost. And I'm not going to lie. I have been a very competitive person my whole life. I have been a very strong-minded person my entire life. That set me off on an internal fire. That I was never going to be treated or talked to like that again. And it's not necessarily the words that he said, but just the entire basis of what it was actually happening at that moment. And that triggered me to say, there's no more. There's no more telling me I can't. There's no more telling me that you're not good enough, that you're not going to make it, that you made the wrong choices. And a month later, I found an opportunity, and it gave me positivity. And I could see some lights happening. And a week after that, I got laid off, which started to show me that these positive signs were starting to fall in. That change that happened just a month before, when that happened in the office or in the boardroom, was starting to show me that there was positive change happening in me, and I could actually start to peg that it was happening in a line. And then I made a decision. I smoked for 21 years of my life. And I told my wife, I'm buying 2 more packs. I'm going to go to the store right now. I bought those 2 packs, and I'm going to be done when they're done. I made up my mind. It was over. I smoked those 2 packs, and I found a third. I'm not going to lie. I smoked that third too, just because I could. And on a Saturday night around 8 o'clock, I had no more cigarettes to smoke, and I really wanted one. So I put myself to bed. And when I woke up, I haven't had the urge to this day to even grab one, think about one. That is in my past. And what that moment meant, and as I told you before, what that moment meant to me is that my mindset is all it needs to be. Like, if you have something burning, your mindset is all you need to change your life.
Mm.
And when you change your mindset, you can change your life in an instant.
Absolutely.
There's more than one mindset that has to happen throughout that. And from that moment, I got in, I would say, an addictive mode for personal development.
Mm.
And I've heard TED Talks on this, of the addicted mode for being knowledgeable about pushing yourself, investing in yourself, that personal development. And I'm a full, firm believer in exactly that.
Yeah.
The more I invested in myself in such a short time, I never read a book in my life until this year.
Wow.
It was not part of my upbringing. I was an athlete. I was going to play professional football like my father. I was going to be that top end athlete. Books weren't in my category. Sports was in my category. You didn't have to read to go play the game.
Right.
And unfortunately, when you get to the real world, that's a bad mistake to make when you're a younger person. So to realize that personal development is that key that really pushed me and that kept my positivity going. Hey, what everybody's telling me, it's working. And
What
my
are
belief system, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to dive in. What are you ingraining yourself in? Is it audios? Is it YouTube videos? Is it podcasts? Like, what are you listening to that's really helping fuel that momentum?
So I listen to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Is a great one for me. I think there's a lot of great stuff out there. I don't believe there's one great thing out there, because everybody's different. Everybody's going to connect to a different energy. That's people are going to connect to this podcast differently based off of just the energy that we can give out, as opposed to another one of your podcasts. It'll create a different energy. So I believe those videos, YouTube is kind of where I started. I'll be completely honest with you. It's not to give Tony Robbins complete props to all this, but I was listening to one of his videos and he just gave me the belief system. He talked about dabbling, and stop dabbling in life. Stop just taking chunks and dabbling. And it put me in my last job, and my previous boss was a dabbler, a really bad dabbler. And he struggled in business, but that was why. It made sense, because he was a dabbler, and I never put that together. I knew something was wrong with some of the stuff that we did in the store, but I didn't understand why. And it was because we were dabbling. We weren't committed. And when you're dabbling, you're not actually taking anything fully in, you're just trying it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard in a mindset set to actually lock in on something when you're going to dabble.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I don't feel you 100% dive into it. You're just kind of, does it work? Does it not? It's kind of like trying to quit smoking.
Yeah.
I'm going to try it one day, but tomorrow when something happens and I get all stressed out, are you going to be able to keep that mindset? Or is that just a dabbling mindset and it's really easy to go right back to smoking? I did that for a good 18 of my 21 years.
Yeah. And I think so many people can resonate with that. And I just want to kind of capture what you've shared so far. I think it's really valuable. So, you're in this, you're doing the job and you're there, and an opportunity was presented to you that was kind of like a smack in your face of just awareness. And it really resonated for you in order for you to take a step forward and look more deeply at life, and opportunities began to surface. And even you being laid off from your job became that opportunity. It's like something, I had a conversation with a friend yesterday, and her husband left her, but she would have never left him. And that's why life is functioning the way it has, because she was ready to step up her game in life, and that partnership wasn't allowing that. And because the universe wanted to guide her, he removed him in another way than maybe what she thought was the blessing. And so now you're looking at, okay, I want to shift. I want to transform my life. I'm going to stop smoking. And you focused your mind there, and you created that change, and you continue to develop yourself. And you talk about the dabbling, and that is so many of us dabble. We try something, but we don't ever stick to it. We don't continue to grow and develop in that specific category, because in our mind it's not working. But all it is we need to keep getting the tools to get us to the next step, to really reinvent ourselves in that arena of life. And I loved it. I mean, it's such a valuable lesson. And maybe you learned it from Tony Robbins, and everybody kind of has their coach, right? And I think that's beautiful. I follow Tony Robbins and many other coaches. And so I can definitely appreciate, you know, the message that resonated and connected with you. As far as, you know, the mindset piece and no longer dabbling, like, how do you work through it in days where you kind of feel like I'm dabbling, or I feel the urge to dabble? Is there anything that you do to help you progress forward and not go that route again?
I remember my past. I reflect.
Mm.
So reflection has been a massive, massive part of my last 8 months. It's been an incredible part. Some might say kind of a mind-blowing in a sense. It's I can look back to every single instance that really was a game changer for me in my life. Like bad, where I'm coming to a fork in the road and I should be going this way, and I brake and I go off to the right for no reason other than I made a bad choice. Why did I make that bad choice? And what I put that all to is default. And what we all have is a default. We have a habit that we get ourselves into. We have a rut that we fall into. And this has all been created by every decision, moment that you've lived up to this day. You have a default from what you've lived prior. And the reason that people get into dabbling is because you learned to dabble from somebody else around you as you grew up. Whether it's the news telling you every day, whether it's a boss, whether it's a parent, whether it's a friend, you've learned it from somebody, it's come into you, and you start to dabble because you feel that that's the way the world just works.
Yeah.
And
well, and even with dabbling, I think it's a form of protection. It's like a wall we put up so that we're looking like we're doing something, but we're not. So it's like, because I know, because I do this, I'm great at looking busy all the time. But in part, that's a protective thing, because as a child, I felt that if I was doing something, then I was good. And if I wasn't, then I wasn't good. So dabbling is my modality of like, well, I'm still a good person because I'm doing something, but it's not getting me anywhere. And then I don't progress forward in that specific space. So yeah, I love what you're saying there. Please continue.
And those ones too, it's tough because you might be stuck in a dabbling moment for a day before you actually click in that you're stuck in default, right? Like it's not like you're just going to see it and it's going to show up and you're going to be like, oh, I'm dabbling again, I better stop. That's not going to be a reality that comes to you. It might be for some small things or some really eye-opening things, but the reason that you are going to catch yourself dabbling is because you invested in yourself and you are now smart enough to catch yourself dabbling.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to your part that you talked about reflecting. So your ability to dabble a lot less is your ability to not only reflect on the successes you've had in life, but the patterns that you're living by, and the pattern of that failure and the success and where you want to make the shifts. And I think that's where self-sabotage comes in, is that we go into this default response and we think we can't do it. We're not reflecting on our past successes, or we're only thinking about the failure and not about the pivot from the failure and how I can achieve this thing. I just need to continue to develop my mind, like you speak to, and really get myself going and create that momentum to keep moving forward. So yeah.
Yeah, like some of my earliest reflections, like my parents split when I was 1 year old. So at that moment, my mom left. So I just got raised by my dad. He was a professional athlete at the time, and we lived that lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But at that moment, it also gave me a realization that I wasn't good enough. And when life gets tough, you just leave.
So why?
That's what my mom did, right?
Oh, because your mom left?
Because my mom just left right away. And as I grew up, just realizing my house was different. But what happened there? And I created my own personal reality that when life gets tough, just run away. It doesn't matter
Because
if that's the
what was
lesson.
modeled to you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if somebody tried to teach you that lesson or told it to me or didn't tell it to me. I created my own default right away that it's okay to run. And then a few years later, my dad retired from football, and we walk into the locker room the year after he retires to grab his playing helmet and have a keepsake. And I'm about 4 years old at this time, and there's 200 and some football bags in the room. They just got back from training camp, and the equipment manager said, "I don't have time to find your helmet, Al. I'm sorry, but if you guys want to take the time to open each bag up, you can find your helmet, your number's on it." He goes, "No, that's okay." And we walked out. And I was that kid that wanted that helmet. I was that kid that so badly was willing to go through all 250 bags in the next 5 minutes to make sure my dad took his helmet home, because that helmet meant the world to me. But when he just kind of said, "No, it's too much effort,"
Then you walk away.
that again was another instilling moment where when life gets tough or it's not going exactly the way you want it, just walk away. It's okay. And that's not what my parents intended at the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I can tell you guys,
where they're at.
and I can tell everybody here, what I was able to take out of those in my reflections is my parents did the best they could with what they were taught at that moment in their life.
Yeah.
And that is it. There's no blame. There's no hate. There's no anything towards my reflection towards them. I just had to realize what my reality was out of that moment.
Yeah. And what patterns that were instilled in you because of those behaviors that they exhibited.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's my default.
Right. Yeah.
Whether I instilled that or somebody else helped me do it, it doesn't matter. That is my new default. And I make every decision for the rest of my life based off of those moments.
Yeah. And it's our responsibility to recognize these defaults and then take action to make the changes if it's not working in our life.
Right. And I want to say, for a lot of people, you're not just going to be able to reflect. So don't grab this and just say, "I started reflecting on day one and that's how I changed my life." That is an absolute false statement. So don't take that there, because there is a lot to reflection. Like, we reflect every single day. Everybody does to some degree. They just don't realize what they're thinking about and how much just one thought of that reflection could actually change the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Like, I had a client that I was talking to not that long ago, and his father does not believe that he can help anybody. He does not believe he's going to be able to help the next generation, because he's still, the father doesn't believe that the son's going to be able to kind of do what his career path is chosen for him.
Okay.
So in that, I said, "But just hold on a second. You lost your brother. So your father lost a son. You had a life-changing moment. You chose to do this. The father has not been able to cope with it yet. So mindsets are completely different. The father's still in that sorrow mindset. He's still in grieve mode. He's still trying to cope with the fact that he lost a son, and the son's going, "I just lost my best friend. I'm going to change the world because I don't want this feeling to happen to somebody else."
Yeah.
The dad can't comprehend that. So he actually bashes him and tries to stop him from making a career move. And he honestly just needed that little push to guide over. But I had to let him know that his dad's only doing the best he can at the moment of where he's at.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great lesson for everyone in the reinventing you process. There's no judgment against the father. He is where he is, doing the best he can with what he knows. But it's also important in the process of trying to become a new version of yourself. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be trying new things. You're going to be questioning things, but you want to be cautious with maybe who you're communicating and sharing the information with. And this is where these coaches come into play. One, they know the story and they've gone through the experience where they've gone through the work to create the change. Because if I'm sharing, you know, even going through my divorce and stuff like that, I kept a lot of stuff private, and I did it because I wanted to reflect within myself and make the decision that I knew instinctively was right for me. And then I would read or research or connect with people who had the experience I wanted to have, not those who were going through detrimental, horrible divorces and all that. Like, I wanted to connect with those that were living the life that I wanted to live at the level I wanted to live it. And so I follow Tony Robbins and Sage Robbins in their marriage and different relationships, so that I know who I want, how I want my next relationship to look like. And so I just wanted to speak to that, because I love it was a perfect, you know, segue into understanding that who you're sharing and who you're trying to evolve around can be a contributing factor that might halt you or help you move forward. And you want to be conscious of those choices.
Yeah, and that is a huge, and I'll add on to that, is just being around solid people that you click with.
Yeah.
Another one that Tony Robbins sunk into me right off the hop is 80% of the world is not going to click with you on a day-to-day basis. 10 to 20% of the world is what you're actually going to get benefit and positive steps to your dreams every day. And if you even think of your closest knit friends that are not into a mindset or anything, that's just your general friends prior to this, and you look at your group, you can probably peg down that you're only going to have conversations like this with 2 or 3 of those people.
Right. If that. Yeah,
so now you're down to like the 10%, right? Like out of 10 people, you're probably only having this conversation with 1 or 2 of your friends, which
right.
means the 90 to 80 percentile, exactly what Tony's saying. And when I put that in my head, I walk out into the street and you meet people at the grocery store, and you meet people here, and you meet people at these other spots. And I know it's challenging right now with the time that we're in, but still you come across and meet some people, whether it's the person when you're phoning to pay your TV bill, if they're grumpy or however it works, 80% of the people are not pushing you towards your dreams.
Right.
They're not being positive. They're being negative, or they're whining about something that's happening in their life, and it's draining.
Yeah.
But when I realized 80% of the world is not going to help me on a day-to-day basis, right. I was okay with that, because now when I have that conversation and I come across somebody that's just not in the mindset that I'm in, I can appreciate that they're part of the 80 percentile today, and I'm going to start looking for my 10% and just keep moving on. That eventually I'm going to run into one. And if not, I know my wife at the end of the day is one of those 10%. Yeah. So I'm going to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And I think it's not to say that 80% is not in some way compatible with you. Maybe you both like to watch football or whatever it may be, but it is to say that when we're trying to grow and develop ourselves, it's really critical that we connect with people who are striving for more and who are thinking the way that we want to think, or trying to expose and surround themselves with those people. And, even to not give the current times an excuse, because I met you through a community on Facebook, right? Like, I am meeting people continuously because I'm putting myself out there, and I'm looking for platforms where the people that are my 10% are showing up. And sometimes I don't find the right platforms. Okay, great. Then I just won't hang out on that platform, and I'll find another one. And so there's so many social medias and so many people, because nobody's really leaving their house, they're joining these groups and they want to connect with people. And this is a great way to begin making new friendships, even across the world. I mean, I have friends all over the world at this point, just from different programs that I've done and different groups I've joined. And like, I feel more robust as a person to not be so, California, I'm in California, you're in Canada, right? So, we're just different parts of the world, but we have the same goals and dreams in life. So I think that's wonderful. I think it's amazing the process that you are going through and continuing to go through. Can you speak to, when you speak about mindset and just really staying there consistently, is there any other suggestions you might have around that? And I speak to this again because I feel like mindset is such a strong area of where we can get either off track or on track. And some people think happy thoughts all the time. And I'm not one of those specifically that's like always just feel happy. I'm one of those who likes to reflect and who wants to look at my patterns and habits, but also, try and shift my thought process to a more productive way than a negative or self-depleting thought process. But I just wanted to open that space if you had any other thoughts around it.
Yeah, you're not gonna just be happy. Like, that's not that. When anybody says just smile, you probably feel like cracking them at the moment that somebody says that, if you're not in that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's not what's actually going to make somebody smile.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a moment where you have to get there, and you have to take some joy in the fact, but I think just to be happy, ultimately, you have to be riding a passion. You have to be doing something purposeful for yourself and have that vision. And that's one thing that for all of my years, my previous 37, I'm going to be 38 coming out in January, but my first 37 years was not the way I want to live. But I look at it every day now going, okay, I didn't live my first 37 exactly the way I'd like to live it. I have at least 50 more to go. So take the time and be patient with yourself, because what I did for the first 37 didn't work. Mm-hmm. But even if I have a bad day, even if I have a bad week, that's a week out of my next 50 years. Yeah. That's not going to break me. Yeah. But the number one thing to make sure that you stay within all this stuff is you have to have a routine.
And what do you recommend for creating a routine? What does that look like?
A routine, and it's the early part of your day is the most critical. It's the absolute most critical. What happens in your first 30 minutes of the day is going to make you or break you every single day. I don't care what kind of news you get after you make your 30 minutes, like your intent in the first 30 minutes, it will not break your day. You will be able to walk through almost anything that comes in front of you once you set yourself a standard of what you want to accomplish in that day. So my start would be waking up, just feeling alive, like I want to be up. There's a purpose that day. The second thing is, and I say this second right away, is because a lot of people's first reaction isn't just waking up, it's where's my phone?
Right.
The number one thing is you do not touch your phone for 30 minutes. You do not jump on a computer for 30 minutes. You do not turn your TV on for 30 minutes. You can have music, but I would even suggest not that, only because you need to set your own personal intention of the entire day. You need to set your goal for the day so that you have a purpose. That creates your purpose right away. And once your purpose is created, you're not letting the outside world affect you. They didn't make up how your day is going to play out. They didn't make up how you're feeling when you first wake up. You know, like you don't look outside and see it snow. Like for you guys, you wouldn't understand that necessarily, but we like in this time of year right now, we wake up and we look outside and one day there's snow and one day there's not. But the reality is if we get snow too early, our mindset is we get bummed out right away. But if I didn't look outside and I made my intent that I feel the sunshine and I feel this, I'm probably going to walk around with more of a vibrant attitude all day, even if it does snow, because the sun's still out. Or, you know, like you're always going to find a positive instead of always dwelling on what's really bugging you. You're always going to be able to pull out the good part of the day or what your actual intent or dream or goal is for the day to push yourself forward. You're not going to be waiting and dwelling on that one bummer thing that happens. Right. And it's not that it's not going to completely derail you at times. But if you did this consistently and make sure that you set your intent for your day before you see anything or let anybody else affect you, like if you have a husband or a wife or a kid that doesn't resonate well with you in the first 15 minutes of the day, then you need to figure out how to keep yourself away from them for the first 15 minutes of the day.
I love it.
Because I will agree with this, and I heard this from one place, your house isn't always your support system, right? And that's a huge thing out there that a lot of people have to understand. You might love the crap out of your husband, your wife, your kids. They might not be your support system.
Right.
And support, as we just said, you got to be around like-minded people. You have to be around people that are supporting you, or at least your vision, right? And finding some of these groups is a great way to do that. But it's, if you don't have your intents set up, you're already a foot back. Like you're in behind, because now you're going to chase the day. Because what happens if you open up and you scroll onto Facebook and somebody passed away? How's the rest of your day going to go?
Right.
It's not probably going to go very well, just because if you have any empathy, you're going to take a little bit of that on. Like you're going to feel it a little bit because you care. And that's a human natural reaction. But if you have a goal, like I need to be on this podcast at 1 o'clock, I can't let that news affect my day.
Right.
So you're not going to let it affect your day, because you're still looking at your goals. You're still pushing for what your day has set out aside. It's not that you're not going to think about it. It's not that you're not going to care about it. It's just, it's not going to derail your whole day when you just woke up first thing in the morning.
Yeah. I love it. A routine is awesome. And I totally agree with you. And I definitely think everybody kind of creates their own routine. Though I definitely agree, no phone, no internet. I personally meditate in the morning when I first wake up, and then I do gratitude practice, and I have a couple other things I do, which is better my rituals and my routine, but it sets me, entering into the day. And I began to do this when I was really struggling in the transition of going through a divorce, because my ex was still in the home. And he was downstairs and my kids are upstairs, and I have to leave my space, my bedroom, the better version of me than how I may be feeling in that given moment, because it's a challenging time. So even when the going gets tough, when you have this ritual, and that became my ritual of meditating, centering myself, being grateful for what I have, because my life was falling apart around me, that allowed me to show up differently in life, to be a better mom to my kids, to be a better, soon to be ex-wife to my ex, even though times were tough. Right. And so I love that message, and just just showing up and being willing to, remove yourself from certain components when you start your day, so you can really create a better outcome moving forward. This was so amazing. I loved everything that you had to share. It's such a great, and just to summarize again, you talked about, looking for the opportunity to make some shifts and stop dabbling in life and continue to grow and develop yourself. And that it's not going to be this perfect, glorious process all the time, but when you can learn to the practice of reflection in the different forms that there are, and continue to expose and surround yourself by people that are trying to live a bigger and a better version of themselves, and create that routine when you wake up in the morning, so that you can enter your life, this reinventing part of you, as this better version of yourself, so that you can show up and really create the life that you want, and progress forward and take action. Did you have anything else you wanted to wrap up with? I mean, you had some great information.
I got 5 points that I was going to leave you guys with.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
These are going to be my tips to longevity of finding yourself, holding yourself accountable, and just ultimately believing in yourself to self-develop. Okay. And number 1 to me is be honest with yourself. You cannot do any of this stuff if you're lying to yourself. And I don't care how painful it gets. You might not be ready for some of it yet, and that's okay, because that's why you're going to personally develop. But you have to be honest with yourself. I read 2 different books. One was about kind of more of a spiritual thing and a prayer that would make you own yourself. The book talked about you had to own what you were doing in that space.
What was the book?
Pardon me?
Do you know the title of the book?
Zero Limits by Dr. Vitali, the Ho'oponopono kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't practice it, but I loved how soft it was. But at the end of the day, I'm a big believer. I don't know if I can swear on here, but own your shit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That is ultimately the words that need to be said to each other, to ourselves, is you have to own yourself.
Right.
And I read that book, and I really liked the background of what he was pushing and what the whole theory of it was.
Yeah.
And then I read another book that was a complete opposite, and it was Grant Cardone's 10X Rules.
Yeah,
And
those
that,
are extreme different.
and this is exactly where I'm going with it, is
Yeah.
that one was so soft and gave me the same thing. Own yourself.
Yeah.
Then you go to Grant, and he's like screaming at you,
Yeah.
kicking you in the butt. He's telling you that, you know, you probably already screwed some stuff up. But at the end of the day, own your own shit.
Yeah.
That is his main point for the entire book. And the funny part is Dr. Vitale on the other book of Zero Limits, same thing. They're just telling you, doesn't matter which way you're coming into the middle, if you don't own it, you're not going to take it anywhere.
Yeah.
So owning your own and being honest with yourself is number one.
Okay.
Number two is have faith in yourself. It doesn't matter if it's God, the divine, the universe that you're going with. You have to have the faith and believe in yourself that you're kind of pushing in the right direction. You have to have that faith. And that was one thing I missed out for years, is I didn't understand what faith meant exactly.
And what does faith
having
mean to you
that,
now?
pardon me?
What does faith mean to you now?
Faith means, it just gave me I was never a church person. I had somebody in my family that gave me the complete wrong and idea of what it was. I totally understand why people believe in God today. I totally understand why people believe in the divine, the universe. It's something bigger. It's something to look for past yourself, but not at a friend and a family. It's something that you can talk to when you're by yourself and you need somebody to really believe in you, and you need to just let it out. Faith is really believing deep down in yourself, right? So that's how that is for me. And like I said, I'm new to the faith period, as the word goes. I didn't see that before.
Yeah.
Identifying your default is my number 3. What makes you go backwards? What makes you stay in the rut you're stuck in? Yeah. What made you, even though you go 5 perfect years and your life's all going good, if you lived 30 years the wrong way, like to how you want to live now, you have 30 years of default that's going to run up against your 5 years of success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Default ain't going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
You got to outlive all those lessons you learned for 30 years.
Yeah.
It's not going to change overnight. It's not going to change in your first 15 years either. Default stuck with us for the rest of our life. It's who we began and what we got instilled with us so early. It's always going to be a battle, but you have to be able to see your default so that you know how to kind of change your next move so it doesn't trap you. So identifying your default is a huge one for me. Number 4 is investing in yourself and personal development. It can't stop. That is where you grow. Reflecting on yourself is personal development, in my opinion, because you are growing heavily by being able to identify some stuff within yourself. I can even tell you personal development, even if you think you've had the worst day in the world and you stepped a million times backwards, owning that before you go to bed, that you stepped backwards and that you owned what you just did that day, is a step forward, actually. Because you didn't do that the day before.
Yeah. And you took ownership.
You took ownership. Even though you had a bad day, or you made bad decisions, or you went into default for a week, owning the fact that you did it, that automatically gives you the win for the day. Doesn't matter if that's the only win you have of the day. That makes you win over anything else that happened that day. Pure ownership. And number 5 is the routine. You have to have the routine. If you don't have the routine, you're stuck in your default routine.
Yeah.
Automatic. There's no, you can't dance around it. If you don't create a new routine, it doesn't matter what it is. If you don't create it, and even like a lot of the top leaders, the Warren Buffetts, everybody out there, they've been around for a long time. They specifically talk about a routine or something that's happening every day for them.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's almost 90 or is 90 years old now. It's obviously doing routine has worked for him.
Right.
And he's passed that on. So I can say routine is number 1 or number 5 on my list of you have to have it to be able to continue. And if even you create a routine today, and next week it needs to change it.
Yeah.
It's your routine. You just can't go backwards to your old routine. Otherwise, you're just going to relive your old life.
Yeah. And even just to dive into that a little bit further, sometimes people can be like, well, I don't even have a routine in this arena of life that I'm trying to reinvent myself around. And that can cause a little bit of hesitation or fear. But just look at your life in all different areas and where are you thriving? And look at the routine that you have in place for that, and try and find components. If that's a routine process that aligns with you, try and apply something similar to the other area of your life that you want to make shifts. And then if you can't identify any area of your life, you just feel like you're a hot mess everywhere, then look at past behaviors that have worked for you and that you can then incorporate and create a routine with. So maybe you had past success in maintaining fitness for years, and then you got out of practice. Well, what were you doing? What routine? Did you have a set time you got off? Did you have a set system in order to keep you on track? Try incorporating things like that again into your life. So I just want to dive into that because I know sometimes that can be a fear factor for people in stepping into a new routine.
And I want to touch on one more thing just with your default.
Sure.
Default doesn't mean negative all the way. So if, like you were just saying, you used to be in a really good health regimen and then you got out of it, if you want it back, go reflect exactly where you were having that really good health regimen.
Yeah.
So that you can relive that today.
Right. Yeah.
But don't see that as a negative and just leave it in the past because that you weren't 100% you at that moment.
Yeah.
Relive the fact that you love the health and relive that feeling to bring to into your future spot, your new default.
Yeah.
Don't just drop everything in the past. Actually bring the good stuff forward. Like, don't just drop everything, but bring your good stuff forward. But the stuff that wasn't letting you step forward, that's the stuff that you want to reflect and kind of change.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Jason. This was amazing. I can't thank you enough for just your time and your story and all the helpful and useful guidance that you gave today. Where can people find you and your services?
People can find me on Facebook at Jason Johns.
Okay.
I have a page there. You can also join my Facebook group at Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life. I'm running a 5-day mindset reset right now. We're going into day 3 tonight at 7:30 Mountain Time, and we are talking about routines tonight. So
awesome.
We've done default on Monday night. We did what's your fire last night, and tonight we're moving into routine, and we got 2 more days to go. So
cool.
If anybody's out there, it's just again, it's a positive group. That's there's nothing more than just
community to grow from.
Yeah, it's just a positive place for people to come and be able to support each other through their growth. And I want to be there helping people with their answers and basically just being a household name that people can come to because I just want to spread the joy. I want to spread that this is a reality. The first 37, I didn't feel this. I didn't love myself.
Yeah.
The next 50, I'm going to love myself every single day. I want to share that and how I did it, and kind of that's my passion, and that's what I'm going to push myself towards.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason. This was amazing. I am so excited for everyone to hear your story and your message and all the wonderful lessons that they can take with them to reinvent themselves in life. Have an awesome day, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.